From the latest on Caribbean cruises to kosher safaris, pilgrimages to Jewish Eastern Europe, and award-winning wines and international cuisine in sun-drenched Tel Aviv. Sit back and enjoy the trip with the travel edition of the Jerusalem Post podcast. Good morning.
Vietnam.
No. Although if you're listening from the Vietnam Tourism Board, that was a subtle hint from Mark.
It doesn't look like Vietnam outside.
If we're already starting with outside, I was heading in a completely different direction, but
It's East Vietnam.
the architecture here is really interesting because you've got what I'm guessing are communist period, very square buildings, and then in between them, well, you're better at doing it, but it looks like a mint chocolate ice.
It's lacking the chocolate. It's very minty.
Well, no, if you look at the balustrades and the verandas and everything, it is black, but it kind of looks like chocolate mint.
See, should we argue about whether that's turquoise or not, and whether turquoise is blue or green?
Okay, so we are in the capital of Slovakia, Bratislava. Now, Mark, I have a question for you.
That's early for the question.
You know how every so often you say, as you did a few episodes ago, if I've been in an airport, does that count as a country visit, right?
If I've been in an airport, does that count as a country visit?
Yeah.
Hong Kong.
Exactly, as one example. So do you count it?
Latvia.
Do you count it or not?
No. It depends who I'm trying to outdo. If I'm sat with a colleague of mine at work who goes out all the time around the world and has done half of Africa, then yes, I'll take every airport I can. But my aim is to actually leave the airports.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking is you've been to Bratislava, as you were saying before we turned on the mic, you were here 6 years ago to the very day. I was here 30, I think we figured out, oh my gosh, did we say 37 years ago, something like that?
I think it was over 50, David.
Thank you very much indeed. And it was Czechoslovakia. So they'd come out of communism, but it still hadn't separated into two countries. Does this visit right now to Slovakia count as an extra country on top of Czechoslovakia years ago?
I would say yes, but then you start getting into arguments about who owns which country, and we don't do politics.
Well, as we know from tourism people that we've interviewed on this podcast before, the Czechs and the Slovaks have an excellent relationship.
Yeah, I think I'll allow it in this particular case because you're in the same place.
Oh, sweetheart. Anyway, we are in the capital of Slovakia. We're here for a couple of days. We've got a lot of fun things to do. We're also going to be bringing you quite a bit of the Jewish side of this town and its environs. We've got a real fun time coming up. But first of all, Mark would like to pose a question.
David, would you like another coffee?
Oh, sweetie pie. No, I think two's enough. If we're spending all day outside and it's raining, I don't think it's a good idea for me.
Yeah, the weather isn't brilliant, is it?
Let's be fair, this is one day, and according to the weather forecast, both all of last week and every day from tomorrow is going to be perfect. So it's just one day of rain.
Yeah, it's just we're here and that cloud that follows us around.
We're from Manchester. So, question.
Poznan used to be called Posen. Lviv, and we did a show about Lviv a long time ago, used to be called Lemberg. Believe it or not, Bratislava also has an old name. What is that?
The answer at the end of the pod.
Israel is the startup nation, the scale-up nation, the unicorn country. Join me, Maayan Hoffman, Jerusalem Post Deputy CEO, Strategy and Innovation.
And me, Zachy Hennessy, the J-Post Business and Tech and Innovation Correspondent for our analysis of the most critical Israeli tech innovations today.
In each episode of Inside Israeli Innovation, we'll highlight a new tech trend, discuss the latest innovation news, and interview at least one of Israel's most promising companies.
So if you'd like to know what's on the cutting edge, then this Jerusalem Post show is for you.
Listen to Inside Israeli Innovation on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, old-timer.
Hiya.
We're on the train.
Well, the train's just actually going past us right now. That's a city tram. It's not really a train. It's like an omnibus.
Charabang.
We are, as you probably can hear, surrounded by a school group or a post-school kids group with a couple of mums, and together we are going to discover the joys of Bratislava.
We are with Old Timer City Tours on their Old Timer City Tour bus, and we're going to do a panoramic tour of Bratislava.
Looking forward to this. We walked from our hotel into the heart of town, past the City Hall, past some governmental buildings, past the former National Theatre next to the Opera House. It's a beautiful, beautiful downtown, and we've only just seen a little bit of it.
Now, we're with school children, David, so you need to set an example and behave.
The wheels on the bus go round and round,
Round and round,
round and round,
all
through.
long. Oh, let me get my breath back. Just climbed up a little hill.
It's not too bad. It's only 100 metres or so above the town, 200 metres above the town. There's nothing overly high, even though we are in what they call the Little Carpathians. Of course, the Carpathian mountain range stretching through southeastern Europe, but you don't really see much of the high hills around the capital.
With some excellent wines, if I remember, from when we were in Poland and we did Carpathian wine testing.
And on the way over here, we had Hungarian wine.
Yeah, less said about that, the better. So we are at Bratislava Castle. I would try and put an age on it, but what I found out on the way up is it's been built, knocked down, built, knocked down, built, knocked down, burnt down, rebuilt. I think the current iteration of the castle was finished recently, probably like the turn of the century. They started rebuilding at the turn of the last century, stopped, and then really got going in the 1950s.
This site dates back to certainly pre the Common Era. We're talking about Celts who were here, settlements before that, the Romans were here, but the first real signs of a castle were in about the 9th century when, of course, things were built more from wood.
I think the castle's real claim to fame was during the period of the Habsburgs. Maria Theresa was here. It was one of her representational castles, built for her son, if I'm correct. I'm trying to remember what they taught us on the bus, which was very educational. And then when they left, it's been army barracks, a seminary. This site has done everything during its lifetime.
These days, part of it is open to the public as a museum. I believe some of the rooms are closed off because even to this day it is used for ceremonial purposes, and rightly so. The new government of the Slovak Republic, remember Slovakia is only 30 years old, fiercely proud of this building, its reconstruction and what it represents. Slavs only arrived in this part of the world only 1,200 years ago, and it's a part of the world, as Mark outlined, that's been conquered, reconquered, been parts of different empires, and it's only been in recent times that the Slavs have been able to proudly say, this is ours.
To the right, you can see that the building is used as a concert venue occasionally. Just slightly down the hill to the left is the most amazing view of the Danube River.
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod, or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
We're back on the bus.
It's a lovely little route. We've left the castle behind. We've seen the beautiful blue Danube, but it looked more green than blue. We passed an unidentified flying object, more on that later. And now we're in a beautiful city square with lots of people milling around, lots of souvenir stands, another tram just going by. It's a lovely city, but I think the thing that you wanted to talk about now was contrasts.
I'll do it quickly before they throw us off the bus. One thing about Bratislava is the architectural style changes from building to building. There's Gothic, Baroque, neo-romantic, brutalist, and plenty of good old communist architecture. It literally changes from building to building.
Maybe we'll talk about food later on, but as we've been going around on this train bus, we've seen British pub, Chinese food, Vietnamese food, lots and lots and lots of creperies and pancake stores. And I also see that our host is actually coming to the bus because we've stopped at our terminus, taking photographs of us. But I think we probably need to... Do you dismount a bus?
You get off a bus.
Okay, more after this. We've come into a very small Jewish community centre for the very small Jewish community of Bratislava, and we've eaten some bean soup, potatoes. Mark had a kebab and, of course, hummus. And the hummus side of it means that there has to be an Israeli somewhere round about here. So next to us at the table is Boaz Raz. We'll get on to food and kosher options in a couple of minutes, but first tell us a little bit about where we are.
Is the biggest Jewish community all over Slovakia. There are about 350 members. The community center is the only place in the whole of Slovakia that we have a kosher kitchen, a Rebbe office is over here. Basically everything that you need to fulfill your Jewish religion.
I can tell from the accent and the name, you're Israeli. How did you end up in Bratislava?
I actually arrived to Bratislava from the UK, where I was living about 22 years. I have a Slovak wife, and we actually came to visit Slovakia, and we stayed. It happened about 6 years ago, and since then we are here.
Tell us a little bit about the community today. We're right in the heart of the city centre, just outside the old walls. There's a synagogue not too far away, but do the community live here? How do they all meet? What's the story?
On all the high holidays, we have activities either in the big synagogue, it's a walking distance from the community center, or inside the community center, which we have a really nice garden, and it's a prime location, really nice and quiet neighborhood. For instance, last holiday we celebrated was Lag BaOmer. There were about 170 people participating. We have few traditions. For instance, in Sukkot, we have an event that it's called Sushi in the Sukkah. We have special chefs, sushi chefs that are coming.
Sushi sous chefs.
I see sushi chefs up on the seashore.
Sushi. Yeah. They come and they cook the whole day. Last year, it finished within 20 minutes, 8 hours of preparation, 20 minutes of consuming the food.
So you said the main synagogue is just used on the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Are there services the rest of the year? What's the story?
Every Shabbat in the Jewish Community Center, we have a small Bet Midrash. So most of the services are conducted over here, especially in winter, because the synagogue is quite a large space. We are very, very tiny communities. So for Shabbat, about between 10 to 20 people are coming for services. And only to hit the building, it just doesn't make sense. So we have a small Bet Midrash over here with everything, Sefret Torah. Rabbi lives in a short walking distance from here.
Would you say the community is just an Orthodox community, or does it cater to the wider Jewish community, Reform, Liberal?
It caters to everyone. So in the community, we have a Reform Rabbi, we have an Orthodox Rabbi. They have really good relationship between each other. Everybody conducts his own business. There is no disruption, there is no tension between the two communities. And the community center serves both. Just an example, for Pesach, first the Leil Seder was celebrated the Orthodox, second was conducted by the Reform Rebbe. And everyone can choose where he wants to go. He can go to both, he can go to only one of them. The relationship is really good between the communities.
As David mentioned, we've had a wonderful lunch here. I believe it's really only open for the community. It's an opportunity for the community to come in, basically have a subsidized lunch. As a tourist, what is there to eat that's kosher?
At the moment, the only kosher kitchen in Slovakia is here in the community center. It serves mainly the community members. Sometimes, if tourists are contacting us in advance, we are able to facilitate their needs. But we will have new kosher restaurant that will be opened. Again, 5 minutes walk from the Jewish community. And it will be the first kosher restaurant in Bratislava for a very, very long time. It's something that we worked on the last 1.5 years, almost finished the renovation.
What's it going to be called? What type of food are you going to be serving?
The name is going to be Sababa, quite an Israeli name. It's going to be opened for breakfast. Then we'll have a set menu, which is something that is very popular in Slovakia. Most of the people from the offices are going out for lunch, and most of them are sitting in places where you have a set menu, set price. Apart from that, we are going to serve all the Israeli food: hummus, falafel, kebabs, pargiot, lots of salads. And in the evening, we'll have a small bar over there with kosher drinks, alcohol, beer. It's going to be open from morning until about 10 o'clock.
You grew up in Israel, a Jewish country, been living in London in a large Jewish community, and you've come to Bratislava with 300 Jews. Does it make you feel more Jewish or less Jewish being in a smaller community?
It actually makes you feel more Jewish. If you want to preserve a little bit of your Jewish heritage, it makes you come closer to the community. It's a natural process. I saw it on myself and on other people as well, that become a little bit closer to Judaism. It doesn't mean that we become religious, but we are more connected to our past, let's say that.
So if you're coming into Bratislava, Sababa, right in the middle of town, best of luck with the opening. Boaz, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to have you over here, and hope to see you again.
Have you listened to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition? I'm David Harris, and together with my co-host Mark Gordon, we bring you the best from the world of travel and tourism.
We have people who literally fly to Park City just to do the ski minion.
And it has that heavenly taste that you don't really find nowadays in the market.
When was the last time you went to a restaurant and they bought you a picnic basket about 8 courses in?
The Dracula tour, that's a very unusual honeymoon option, really.
The Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition brings you the joys of travel and tourism. So why not subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts?
Cheers, Mark.
Cheers, David.
So here on this picture, you can see a lot of famous personalities. Many of them I'm sure you will recognize, but for us very important is Andy Warhol, which is fourth from the left, even though he was not really from here. Hello, my name is Eva Čubrikova. I am the local guide here in Bratislava and in the surroundings, including also this museum.
This is a very bright, very open, modern museum with big windows overlooking the Danube. What is the museum?
It is in fact the gallery. It's the Gallery of Modern Art of Mr. Gerard Molensten. It was the idea of one local man, Mr. Polakovic, who is here a director, and he had the idea, but he didn't have money. And somehow it was really good luck for him. He met a man that was the mentioned Mr. Gerard Molensten, who had money and was really interested in opening the art gallery in this place.
Most museums, galleries tend to be in the centre of a city. They tend to be opposite the City Hall, maybe opposite the National Theatre. We're in the middle of nowhere. Actually, we're in the middle of the Danube.
Yes, that's right. But isn't it nice?
It's gorgeous.
It's perfect setting, because in some parts of this gallery you can see the painting and then just the water around, and that's perfect combination. For the founding father of this gallery, it was not in the middle of nowhere. For him, it was in the middle of Europe, and just on the place where the three borders come together, Austrian, Hungarian and Slovak. So we are very close to that point.
The museum, as you say, is on 3 borders. Is the art from this area, or is it from a much wider locale?
The art is from this area, but not necessarily only from Slovakia. As far as I know, there are exhibitions of the artists from the neighboring countries as well, but this gallery has 2 parts, the indoor or inner and outer part, and in the outer part there are many local artists.
3 words come to mind when describing this gallery. One is space, one is light, and one is colour.
Definitely, I think those are the 3 really good preconditions for opening the art gallery. So definitely light is necessary. to see the art properly. Colors, probably you mean that the art itself is very colorful. Yeah, I don't know what to say to this because the art of the 21st century is still something that I didn't digest properly. And the space definitely you need to, because many of the paintings are really oversized paintings.
If I were to come back here on another day, say 2-3 years' time, would it be the same art or is it a changing exhibition?
It's changing approximately 3 or 4 times a year. The exhibitions are always different and the setting is always different. I mean the nature around, so definitely I recommend to come even more times a year. Every time the feeling would be different.
It's a beautiful gallery. I think a lot of the images are ones that make you think. In fact, just turning around and looking at the image behind us, Mark, where does it remind you of? Somewhere that you and I have been on a previous podcast?
Vilnius?
No.
Was it Poznan or was it Łódź in the textile art gallery?
Good point. No, but that's not what I was thinking. Think Spain.
Oh, Dali.
Salvador Dali, the one behind. It's almost like it's the grandchild of Dali. And a lot of the images here make you question, make you think, and they might not be everybody's cup of tea, but there's certainly plenty for people to get to grips with. So before we move on to our next appointment, as I said earlier, this is somewhat isolated. If somebody's coming here without a car, can they get here if they're visiting Bratislava?
Definitely. At least there are 2 possibilities which don't really cost much. And one is to use the public transport from the new Slovak National Theatre. There is every hour a bus coming here. And then maybe even much more fun would be to rent a bike and to come here by bike, because you can combine 2 activities, art and some exercise as well. And this is really suitable for biking because it's flat, it's along the Danube River, and we have completely sheltered bike routes along the Danube River as far as to this gallery.
Well worth visiting. The name, Danubiana.
It's a nice view of the Danube, David.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Both banks look exactly the same. The trees, the greenery, the rocks leading up to the side, the water lapping, the ducks on the sides.
The one on the left looks slightly more manicured.
It wouldn't be perchance that even though you're sort of dangling a microphone in my direction, that we're in 2 different places?
Could be. Can you see that imaginary line between you and me?
There's always a line between you and me.
I try and imagine that there's one, maybe even a wall. Why is there a line there, David?
There's a shared border that runs down the length of the middle of the Danube between Slovakia, where I am, and Austria, where you are.
How's the weather in Slovakia?
It's actually really hot, and the very funny thing is, we were told by our hosts, bring umbrellas. So I've packed an umbrella, you've brought a plastic Macintosh, and it's glorious, glorious sunshine.
It's actually almost too hot. We're on a 2-level boat going down the Danube, and in an ideal world we would be sat at the top watching everything go by. But for 2 reasons: 1, the excessive sunshine, and 2, the excessive amount of river passengers that beats us to the good seats. We're downstairs by the engine.
So a little bit about the Danube. At this time of year, we're talking about 3 meters deep, which is about 11 feet, give or take. So if you think about it, we're in a fairly big ship, and yet, you know, we're not scraping the bottom of the water.
And living in Israel, we don't really see many rivers that you can take a boat down. Maybe like the Hayarkon, you can go canoeing, but other than that, this is quite a unique experience when you live in Israel.
At some point, hopefully in the future, we'll actually take a river cruise on what they call cruise ships, which, you know, can host 200, 250, 300 people. But that's for the future. Right now, this is a boat that is taking us from Bratislava to yet another castle.
Which castle is it, or should we wait and find out?
Should we let our guide tell us?
We should. Do you want to go canoeing?
I can't swim.
Let's go canoeing then.
Bratislava fact file. Slovakia has 6 international airports, including Bratislava and Košice, as well as Piešťany. Bratislava is a destination for Ryanair, Wizz and Smartwings, as well as a number of charter airlines. Košice has direct flights from Vienna, Prague, Dublin, Liverpool and London. Bratislava is around 40 miles from Vienna's international airport, which opens up access to the US, Canada, Israel, France, Dubai, Istanbul, and most major international airports. You can reach Bratislava from Vienna Airport in under an hour by road, rail, or even a slightly slower boat up the Danube. Piešťany has seasonal direct flights from Tel Aviv. In Bratislava, travel from the airport to the city centre takes around 15 to 20 minutes by car. The 61 bus to the main Bratislava train station costs €1. You can buy a Bratislava card public transport pass, which includes free walking tours and free or discounted entry to many attractions. A one-day pass costs €20 and a 3-day pass €28. Bratislava has global hotel chains like Marriott, Sheraton, Radisson and IHG. Other recommended hotels include the Devin, Grand Hotel River Park and Maryl's Boutique. $100 will buy you €91 as of July 2023. Slovakia has a continental climate with 4 seasons. Summers are hot, getting to an average 30 Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Winters are cold, cloudy and humid. The average winter daily temperature is -2 Celsius or 28 Fahrenheit. Bratislava has a kosher restaurant, Sababa, and kosher food is available from the local community centre. Details at yalahumus.sk. Kosher food is also available from the River Cafe. Vegetarian and vegan restaurants in Slovakia can be found on the Happy Cow website. So as we promised, we're about to bring you our guide Eva. We'll just tell you a little bit about where we are. So we sailed from Bratislava along the Danube, heading towards Austria. But at the same time, as we pointed out, Austria was sort of to our left the whole time, and we were travelling west towards, I guess, Vienna. And then we docked at a place called Devin. Above us, high on a cliff top, is an imposing castle edifice. And down below, the Danube does something really bizarre. It splits into 2. What were we looking at, Eva?
That was the confluence of 2 rivers. The main river here, of course, is the Danube River, and the castle was built right above the confluence where Morava River, coming from what is now Czech Republic, joins the Danube River. It's one of its numerous tributaries.
Is it easy to go up and see the castle? It looks quite imposing and high.
It is imposing and high, that's right, but of course it's possible to climb it, but if you don't feel you want to practice that much, you can go to the middle castle only. Already from middle castle you have a very nice view, but those for whom it's not such a big challenge can continue to the citadel, which is the highest part of the castle, and the higher they will go, the better the view will be.
If I'm not mistaken, the castle is about 1,000 years old. In 60 seconds or so, tell us the 1,000-year history.
Wow, that's good too. Okay, 60 seconds. Celts, Romans, Slavic people came, and then they settled here. Among them were future Slovaks, but in the meantime another nation came, Hungarians. So what's now Slovakia became a part of the Hungarian kingdom. But after Hungarian kingdom was devastated by Mongolians, the Germans came here as well. And they lived here all together till 1945. Then something happened.
You said Mongolians.
Yes, that's right. That was very scary situation because they came here in 1241, 1242, and they not only completely devastated the country, but they depopulated it. And that was the reason why Hungarian king, actually he had to escape to save his life. And when he returned back after the Mongolians were over, found the country depopulated, he realized that he had to do something, because if the country is empty, nobody works, nobody pays taxes, and then the king will remain, poor forever. So he invited German settlers, and they really brought the country back to prosperity.
So you got as far as 1945, and as we were sailing and as we were looking at maps which are out there for people who are walking here or cycling here to see, you were showing us where the Germans were, what became basically German territory during the war. But in 1945 there was a sea change with the arrival of the communists, of the Soviets. How did that affect this confluence of the Morava and the Danube with the castle above?
It really has the influence on this territory because, communists took over the power in 1948, but it was quite clear immediately after the war that would happen. Step by step, all this area very close to the Austrian border became fenced and became a part of the Iron Curtain. So people could come to the castle, but they could not get to the banks of both rivers, neither to Danube bank nor to Morava bank. And we were just looking at the Austrians on the other bank of Morava, like from the inside of the cage.
We passed by, in fact walked through, what essentially is an arch. It's a brutal cement arch, and it's covered in what are meant to be huge bullet holes. And on it are a list of names of those people that we know were the victims of the Iron Curtain, but it also talks about other people too.
You can read, if you understand Slovak, you can read in Slovak how many people were kidnapped to the Soviet gulags, especially in the 50s. That was very common. Then how many people were imprisoned just because they tried to escape. It was about 80,000. And how many people were otherwise punished during the Soviet era. Also, it mentions how many had to leave the country after the Second World War because of the fact they were of the wrong nationality.
Just in case we don't interview you anymore on the tape later on as we wander around town, Eva, thank you very much indeed for all of your guiding and your warmth.
Welcome. It was a pleasure for me to guide you.
So thank you to Never Ever, our guide, forever and ever. What have you got there, David?
Do you remember a couple of weeks ago, it's not that long ago actually, we were in Latvia, maybe in terms of the podcast coming out, being published, it's a couple of months back. We tried, I don't even know if we actually, no, we didn't talk about it on air, but we tried rhubarb wine in Latvia.
We did.
Because it's so far north, they can't really grow grapes.
Fizzy rhubarb wine.
It was very pleasant. So now we're trying... What is it? It's red currant.
It's mixed currants, I think.
Mixed, yes.
The bar that we're outside sells black currant wine, but clearly the crop was mixed this year. So it's mixed currant wine.
And you can get white and red and darker coloured currants. You're good at describing tastes.
The man behind the bar said it's about 12%. It's quite sweet. It has that taste of Jewish Kiddush wine about it. And it's really rather good.
It is. It's sweet, but you can also taste a sour currantiness.
Is that a word, currantiness?
It is now.
It is after you've been drinking the currant wine.
As we wander around Israel, there are many walks that you can go on, and they talk about the 7 species of Israel. For example, the pomegranates and the olives and so on, figs, dates. And as you're walking through Israel, you can actually see them on the trees, pick them, eat them. So it's pretty much a similar experience here. As we got off the boat, there was this beautiful tree, and there were lots of people around it jumping up, trying to reach the fruit. They were tiny little plum-like fruit, which were very sweet, and you just pick them and eat them.
Do you remember when we were children, we were told never pick stuff off the trees that we don't know?
That's why we have forever and ever with us. Oh, Mark, you know we just had that lovely currant wine. I'm dreading what's about to happen in my tummy.
I feel like I'm floating and heading for space. You love heights, don't you, David?
Okay, there's heights and then there's UFOs.
Yes, thankfully there's no windows on this lift, but we're heading into space.
We're hurtling 85, 90 metres into the sky, and we're doing it in 45 seconds, I believe.
Feels like about 3. I can hear the thing rattling behind me. I'm holding on.
It's amazing all over the world, but I guess we've particularly felt it in Central Europe because we've been here so many times. People are a bit obsessed with tall buildings and you're having to go all the way up to the top to look out.
As long as there's a lift, though, because I much prefer a scary lift to scary stairs.
We're about to open the door, and let's see what we're about to find. So it's called the UFO because it's shaped like a UFO.
There are aliens emerging from a little pink stairwell.
So I know we said goodbye to her a little bit earlier, but Eva has braved the elevator and the elements. Eva, what are we looking at?
Now we are looking at Bratislava, I would say both banks of Bratislava. You can see the right bank, which was part of the Roman Empire many centuries ago and which is very flat. And then you can see the city center on the other side with all our famous sites, including the Coronation Church, including Bratislava Castle, including the TV tower on top of the hill. The TV tower has a shape of a wine bottle because, by the way, what we are looking at, that's the prime wine region of Slovakia, little Carpathian wine region. And we can also see Austria and we can see Hungary as well from here. So this is really panoramic view. Sometimes even 2 different mountain ranges, the Carpathians, and on the horizon we can see the Alps.
To the left, and I think we're still in Bratislava here. In fact, I know we're in Bratislava. I can see something called Owl Park, and it says Bratislava Shopping Centre. How's the shopping in Bratislava?
Shopping is good because we have more than enough of shopping centers in Bratislava. Moreover, they are open 7 days a week except of state holidays, and we have 13 state holidays when all the shops must be closed. Otherwise, Sundays open as well, contrary to Austria, where Sundays shopping centers and shops are generally closed.
In this angle, I can see a graphic with lots of TV towers from around the world and viewing platforms. We're at 95 meters. David, how do you fancy the Macau Tower at 338 meters?
Well, Cosima Watkins from Cathay Pacific recently suggested that we go over there and take in some of those rather high buildings, and my answer, Cosima, is forget it. I think 90 meters on the UFO is enough for me.
Hello, welcome, gentlemen. First of all, I want to welcome and greeting your listeners to your podcast. My name is Matej Pavlovic. I'm a floor manager at UFO restaurant.
Does it help that you have this stunning 360-degree view? Or from the point of view of a restaurant, is it actually a problem because people are spending more time looking at the gorgeous views than they are appreciating all the wonderful food that you're serving up?
It's a really good question, but yes, it's about the view and also about the food, and the food is about perfect, and then you can enjoy the food and the sunset and the view as well together in one time. It's our best combination.
You've obviously got the fabulous view, and you have to have fabulous food to go with the fabulous view. What's on the menu here?
We have a combination of Mediterranean and Asia cuisine. Actually, we have a 3 and 4 and 8 course degustation menu and our a la carte as well.
Mark and I have talked about degustation.
David, that was indigestion.
What does it mean to you? What does degustation mean to you?
Degustation is a selection of local ingredients with the modern cuisine, what we like.
What are local ingredients? What makes Slovakian food Slovakian?
Actually, we have on our degustation menu maybe beef tongue, which is served with egg yolk, egg white espuma. It's served with potato, which is a really good appetizer. Also, we have a fluffy pumpkin velout, maybe venison loin, and also our perfect dessert is a curd dumplings served with poppy seed espuma and apricot sorbet, maybe. They are my favorite dishes there.
I'm looking at the
We've already established it's indigestion menu. Yes,
The
Mark. Maybe you should say degustion. It'll come out more
degustation.
easily. Yes, exactly.
Which is probably completely wrong. Course number 7 is smoked marrow ice cream with onion crumble.
Oh,
it's really delicious, and you have to try it once because it's really specific. It's a really unusual ice cream.
Is it sweet or savory or both?
It's yes, it's a little bit sweet and a little bit creamy and really delicate. Yeah,
and what wine would you pair it with?
Actually, it's paired with our wine, which was prepared for a 50th anniversary of this building last year ago. And actually, it's a Devin. It's a Slovak wine. It's semi-dry. Really tasty. I will give you one bottle.
Before we let you go, because you've got a whole restaurant here to manage, given that the views are 360 degrees, are stunning, are very different from each window, which is the best table in the house?
Our most popular and most favorite table is a table 35. Is this one in the middle where sit actually this lady and this gentleman. Perfect view on the old town and also sunset.
Thank you so much for spending time with us.
I want to thank you guys. Thank you for your visit and have a good night.
This is Mark Gordon from the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com. Day 2 here in Bratislava, and we start the day in a unique place underground next to the River Danube.
When a Jewish community has to move from place to place, as space for the Jewish community changes because of the needs of the community or the city around it, different things happen throughout Europe, but this is perhaps, for you and I, the most unique place where we've seen evidence of the moving of a community.
We were in Prague last year. The 100,000 members of the community that were buried within a small plot are still there. The Maharal of Prague is there. Everything remains. But in Slovakia, it was a very different story.
It's a new day. We have a new guide. If you could introduce yourself to our listeners, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Blanka. I'm the local tourist guide from Bratislava.
Just explain for our listeners where we are.
We are also directly under the castle of Bratislava, and the castle hill, actually one side of that hill, started to be in the 16th century the Jewish quarter out of the city walls after the Jewish community had to leave the city, and here on the Danube they had their cemetery. The cemetery had to be destroyed in 1940s because of the build of the tunnel under our castle. They saved one small part of this cemetery, having over 2,000 graves. This rabbi district with the famous grave of Rabbi Hatam Sofer, his original name Moses Schreiber. Around his grave are also graves other rabbis being in Bratislava before him.
When we approached the site, to the left were a number of modern office buildings. There's a tram line. All you could really see was a sort of stone monolith poking out of the ground. We're not actually at ground level, are we? We've come underground to the gravesite.
Here was, from the side of the river, one 3 meters tall wall to protect the cemetery from the Danube waters, of course. Danube was in that time much wider, like it is now. It's now regulated. So the level was original here, where we are now, over 3 meters underground. So they preserved it like they built a concrete shelf around and then a concrete panel roof above.
If I can describe it, I guess we are in what feels like an underground bunker with poured concrete all the way around. in the ceiling are glass panels. I'm guessing there are about 60, 70 glass panels here. And not only can you see them below ground, but they also stick out into the grass above, I guess reminiscent of, or to remind us that this is a grave site and there were other graves here as well. The other people who were buried here, about 2,000 people, were moved to the new Jewish cemetery. This particular cemetery was used from the 1600s to the middle of the 19th century. And so burial stopped here, a new cemetery was open, and as this work was being carried out, the Jewish community here and internationally managed to persuade the authorities to allow the Chevra Kadisha, those Jewish people responsible for looking after graves, to move the bodies, to exhume them and move them to the new site. Who comes today to visit this area?
So at first it is a very special pilgrimage place for Orthodox Jews. So Orthodox Jews from all over the world. And then we have here a lot of tourist groups. We have here Danube, so Danube cruises groups, a lot of them especially from US.
Are you able to tell us a little bit about the Hatam Sofer, who he was?
He was born in Frankfurt am Main at the end of 18th century. He became to be rabbi in a lot of places in present Czech Republic, Austria. Finally, at the beginning of 19th century, he arrived with his wife to Pressburg in that time, Bratislava now, and he stayed here, and he was rabbi here over 30 years.
For those of you that were listening to the quiz question at the beginning of the podcast, there may be a very large clue there as to the answer.
The Hatam Sofer established a yeshiva called the Pressburg Yeshiva, which was not only here for a long time, but also was moved across to Israel, as many European yeshivot were. Why was there the need, in his opinion, to establish this center that created so many Orthodox rabbis?
He stayed here. Bratislava had a perfect location in the former Hungarian kingdom we belonged in the time. He established this school because he believed that Orthodox Judaism is very important to preserve the Jews.
Because, of course, that was in the face of the establishment of a growing Reform community, which began in Germany and spread around Central Europe.
Practical question. If I'm visiting Bratislava, can I just turn up at the site? Do I need to book in advance? And do you know, is there a payment required to come here?
Yes, they required payment, and you have to call in advance for your visit because this is not opened the whole day.
It is a very unique place. It's a very special place. A lot of people have obviously been here before, and the floor is filled around the graves with hundreds of small pieces of paper, which are prayers that people hope the rabbis here, the Hatam Sofer and the others, the original Akiva Eger amongst them, will be the intercessors for their prayers and that they would be answered in heaven. One of the highlights of any visit that Mark and I make around the world, but particularly in Europe, is to come to a city where there's just one synagogue left for all the obvious reasons. In the particular case of Bratislava, we actually have the communist times to thank for the destruction of the other synagogue in town, but one synagogue remains here, and we've been privileged and honoured to meet one of its older members who can tell us a lot, not only about this synagogue, but also about some of the terrible times of the past, and of course the fact that there is the joy of a synagogue still standing here. And his name is Ivan Pasternak.
Our synagogue is Orthodox synagogue, and we call it also templom in Hungarian language. This architecture by Artur Salatnai Slatinsky, he made it, he won competition to this synagogue, and it is in cubistic style.
The building is celebrating a special anniversary this year. It is 100 years since the foundation stone was laid. Is the furniture here the original furniture from the synagogue, and how did it survive?
This furniture, what we sit and tables are original. It was from 1923 to 1943 in the synagogue. After it was in the garden here in our shul.
Why did it end up in the garden of the shul?
Because it was Holocaust.
The regime here, the fascists, the Nazis, didn't destroy what was here. It was just stored away. Tell us the story of, on the Bima, we have the place that the Torah is read from. You showed us, you pulled back the covering, and underneath it there are scratches on the surface that the Torah is read from. What is that?
It was German who write swastika. We have it and we don't
paint over it.
Yes, because every boy who is bar mitzvah comes to this bima and he knows that swastika is there.
You're a very young man. You look 20, 21 years old, but I believe you're slightly older than that, and you have a very interesting story about how you and your mother survived the war. Can you tell us that story?
Yes, thank you very much. I am not such a young boy, but I was a little boy in 1944 when in September to October were the last catching of Jewish people here in Bratislava, and we were also catched and deported to concentration camps. My father went to concentration camps straight from railway station Železná Studanka to Sereď and after to Auschwitz, and he died in Dachau. And me, my mother with me, we were in concentration camp in Mariatal. In the time, today this village called in Slovak language Marianka. And there we lived several days. And one day my mother asked Slovak soldier if he has, do you have a knife, because my boy have some money.
So the money was hidden in a collar on your clothing?
Yes, in my clothing, yes. And he opened it. Oh, boys, we have money, we are going to canteen. And they went to canteen, and my mother went after, and to the left to the forest, and to the family who was very good to us. And this family, I would like to tell his name. He was Andrej Havel and Helena Havelova, and they hidden us until the end of war. We survived until 1945 when we were celebrated.
Here we are 80 years later. You married, you've got 2 sons who live here, you've got 2 granddaughters. You are a very important part of this shul, this synagogue. You are showing people around. When the high holidays come, you participate in the services in 2023. How important is it for you that this community is still here today and that hopefully it will be here tomorrow?
For me, it is very, very important. My wife died 14 years ago. Also my auntie, parents, grandparents. My father died when I was very little boy. My father died in concentration camp Dachau near Munich. My mother died when I was 18 years old. Maybe it was hiding in Second World War. And after, now I'm retired, but I would like to help to our community. And it's very good that everybody knows that I'm here.
Ivan or Ilan Pasternak, thank you for everything you do to keep this community alive, to keep this synagogue open for people to come and learn. And thank you to the family that kept you and your mother alive and the important role they played in today's Bratislava community.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And if you want to visit this synagogue, it's open on Sundays and Fridays from 10 a.m.
My name is Michael Vanek. I'm the director of the Museum of Jewish Culture that is part of the Slovak National Museum. We are now standing in one of the last two remaining buildings of the old Jewish ghetto in Bratislava, and we are standing in the exhibition of our museum.
Can you, in 60 seconds, tell us about the museum and who comes to the museum and what it tries to show about Jewish Bratislava?
We are in the process of remodeling the 25 years old exhibition. So in 3 years you'll see I hope, totally new museum. But at the moment we have 2 floors. One is dedicated to religious life or life of religious Jews, and the other one is dedicated to temporary exhibitions. We are standing in one of them that is talking about the organized swimming within the Jewish community.
Mark was saying to you before we recorded that, of course, the world's smallest book is the book of Jewish sports stars. However, on our way over here, our guide pointed out a plaque to a world wrestling champion. Down the road from here is another plaque to the creator of Krav Maga. And here we are, surrounded by something that you have built, a temporary exhibit, about the swimming stars of the 20th and 21st centuries.
Yeah, the memorial plaques that you stumbled upon are actually the outcomes of our attempts. And we did exhibition about first the star wrestler that was a world champion, Maccabi champion in 35 in Tel Aviv. And then he was luckily, because of the Shoah, was called to US, where he became a huge star in wrestling. That's David Unreich, that was able to fill the Madison Square Garden, for example. And the other guy, Emil Lichtenfeld, who invented Krav Maga, that Israelis know very well, so I won't talk about that. And now we are standing in the room where we talk about the famous Bratislava Jewish Swimming Club. That was kind of a pioneering in actually in swimming, in methodology of swimming. They had a European medalist. In 1937, they were the unbeatable team in Czechoslovakia. Some of the swimmers survived when they stayed in London when they had a swimming tournament in 1939. Unfortunately, the rest was murdered in Slovakia and other places. So, but connection to Israel. On one hand, we have the members of the Bar Kochba swimming team I was talking about. On the other side are the stories of actually Slovak Israelis. We have David Sivor, who was survivor from Bratislava, immigrated to Israel in 1949, and there he became a coach of Israeli swimming team and also the boss of the Israeli Swimming Federation. And we have Ivona Tobis, who was born in Bratislava. She was the youngest swimming Czechoslovak champion, beating women at the age of 12. When their family immigrated to Israel in 1964, she was immediately spotted by the Israeli swimmers, and she became a swimming star of Israel, representing Israel at the 1968 Mexico Olympic Games.
How do people find out more details about the museum? Do you have a website?
You find us on the website of the Slovak National Museum, but the best thing is to follow us on the social media, so Instagram and Facebook, you find us there.
Thank you so much for showing us this museum. David, we better get out of here because you can't swim.
Glug, 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 glug. Oh, Mark.
Well, what have you done now?
You know, when you get this sort of feeling, a warm feeling, satisfaction after a good meal, after a beautiful sunset, after seeing amazing sights, historical buildings, going on a boat, that type of Mark.
Oh, yes, no, definitely. Although, if you've seen the sunset, we've got a problem because it's lunchtime.
And we're surrounded by gorgeous trees overhead. as you can tell, is wrap-up time from this particular podcast. Bratislava has paid host to us beautifully. There is so much to see and do here. We've only been in for 48 hours.
Yes, but Bratislava is known as the 72-hour city.
In fact, we know this because there is a lovely gentleman who comes from the Bratislava Tourist Board who's been following us around. He's great. He's not a minder at all.
Not in a creepy way. He hasn't followed us like that. He's been our guide.
He's really nice. He's called Julius, and we have to say a big thank you to Julius. But every so often, he gives us this piece of paper to remind us that Bratislava is indeed the 72-hour city. And our trip has been implemented with the financial support of the Ministry of Transport of the Slovak Republic. And, of course, we have to say thank you to the Bratislava Tourist Board.
Well done. You actually read out what we've been holding. Every 3 or 4 hours, Julius will make us hold up this piece of paper and in front of us just to prove that we're still here. It's like a proof of life when you've been kidnapped.
So you should be very jealous, of course, of what we do. We go around the world doing this type of thing. But we always say to you that we have been sponsored by such and such an organisation. And what a lot of the places do is we'll be just interviewing somebody or looking at a museum piece or an artefact, and suddenly there's someone behind us taking our photograph because they want to put it on their Facebook page or show their bosses that they're actually doing a really good job. And Julius has done a splendid job.
Yes, thank you, Julius.
I should point out the reason we're thanking Julius is because he's sitting opposite us.
And he's paying for lunch.
And he took a photograph of us while we were recording.
And there's beer in front of it. No, thank you, Julius. Thank you to our wonderful 2 guides who have got us to places on time over the last 2 days, Eva and Blanca. And a big thank you to Jack, who organised our flights for us, Jack from World Jewish Travel.
Thank you to all of you. For those of you who have got this far in the podcast, and obviously you have if you're listening to us right now, it's our usual request that you subscribe, tell all your friends about what we do, give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider, and if you could write a nice review, that would make Mark and my parents up in heaven look down on us with a big smile.
I think my parents are probably looking up, but we won't go into that one. No, but seriously, if you enjoyed this podcast, there are dozens and dozens of other podcasts in our travel series.
Oh, I thought you meant dozens and dozens of podcasts that are better than ours by other people.
There are no podcasts better than ours, David. You know that. You keep telling me that this is award-winning podcasting. So if you have an award out there that you'd like to give us...
We've got a back archive of more than 60 episodes that are really well worth a listen. Please send us any comments to our email, markdavidpod@gmail.com, and our social media handly thing is @markdavidpod.
Quiz time.
Go for it.
So, Poznan is known as Posen, or the other way around, was known as Posen.
Mm-hmm.
Lviv was known as Lemberg. What was Bratislava known as?
Jolly good 48 hours or 72 hours. Yeah.
Is it 48? Actually, no, we arrived at night, so we've done this in like twice the speed, really. 36 hours.
But we get
Should we get back to the quiz, David?
Yeah, go for it. What's the answer?
You may have heard it in the pod, unless David's edited it out.
We shall see.
Pressburg.
Yeah, I'm pressing now.
I'm not a burger.
Oh, that was press mark.
Yes.
Folks, thank you very much indeed for listening to the pod. Hope you enjoyed it. We are going to be back in a few weeks' time with the continuation of this trip, because after we hit the stop button here, we're heading to another region of this beautiful country, so look out for that. But for now, Mark? It's dessert. It's dessert, in which case...
Wow, look at that.
Oh, my good Lord.
Good, I'll have the smaller one, please.
Okay, in that case, folks, goodbye.
Goodbye.